Okay, with that, we're going to move on. I have some basic tips that I want to go through, just in terms of if you do decide to do services, whatever ways you want to do it. These are some just basic tips, things to keep in mind while you're doing this. It's always better to have video than just have audio. I know a lot of places are just posting audio sermons. That's great. The reality is most people are not just going to want to sit in their living room and put on an audio sermon and listen to it. You are much more likely to have people engaging in the service if they feel like they're engaged. Okay, and that's why I said make the experience feel as much like a real service as possible. And while recognizing the limitations, no, this is not the same as corporate worship being together, but you want to give that feeling as much as you can. You want to do the best you can. So the more you can add to that, the better. And I think having a visual service really makes a huge difference. If you can have more than just the sermon, that's good too. The most you can do, the more you can do, the better. Of course, not everybody's able to do that, and I think that's okay. We all have limitations and have to talk about what some of those things are. And I said here, if you don't do this well, people will be watching someone else's services. And I can tell you that. I know a lot of people that have said, especially people 35 and under who have said, my church isn't really doing anything very well. We're just watching another church. Okay, they're watching another LCMS church somewhere. I know Pastor Will Whedon's church congregation, if you're familiar with him, has been live streaming, and I know a lot of people are tuning in there. I know a lot of people that are tuning in there and aren't listening to the sermons of their own pastors. And the reason they're giving for that is not that they don't want to hear the sermons of their pastors, but just they're not providing anything other than maybe an MP3 of a sermon, which just is not the same, because you want to participate in the liturgy and you want the full experience as much as you can get. So it's something to be aware of, that there will be people, if you're not doing this well, they will be looking somewhere else. And that could be maybe a problem coming into the future as well, that they'll be kind of disconnected from the church. We want to keep them disconnected or as connected to the congregation as possible. And then as you're recording, if you're doing this, just, kind of a rule of thumb, good audio quality is always more important than good video quality. I'm stressing the importance of having video along with audio, but honestly, the audio is far more important. And you can look at this just in terms of YouTube views and what people watch on YouTube. There have been some very popular YouTube channels that have not great video. The camera is not good, but people will still pay attention because the audio is good. And when the opposite is the case, people tend to tune out and they don't get viewers, they don't get subscribers. So that's just this general thing that people tend to notice. It's a trend that audio, good quality audio, just means a lot more, especially at a church service. You want to be able to hear, you want to be able to know what's being said in the sermon. It doesn't matter if your alb looks really good in video on your video that day. If nobody can understand what you're saying, there's no point. So that is the more important thing.
Could I ask a question real quick?
Please,
about
yes.
the audio? I mean,
yes.
Any suggestions? I mean, what I have right now as the option is the webcam that I'm using now is what I'm videoing my service with. And I've got either I use the microphone on that, which doesn't do well at all, or I run the audio from the computer out to the sound system and back into the computer, which is what I'm doing.
Yes.
But I'm having to cobble together cables and so forth that don't make that the best quality either. Do you have any suggestions? I mean, I don't even know what I can get. I looked at Amazon for just, a couple of cables that might help me out, and I couldn't get anything until the end of April.
Yeah, see, this is the problem right now is there are a lot of things that I would recommend. But unfortunately, for the time being, Amazon is not shipping very quickly. There are a ton of resources, things I would offer on Amazon to say they're great things to use. I'm using right here, this is my Blue Yeti mic, and I have a list of some things that I recommend. This is like the best podcasting mic you can get. If you're doing devotions or something sitting at a desk, it's the best thing you can get for a reasonable price. But the problem is it's just hard to get anything. Now, what I would recommend is you can get, go ahead.
What did you call it?
The mic that I have here?
Yeah.
Yes, and I have on here somewhere, I do have, I believe, sorry, somewhere I have, I think, a list of some things. If I don't,
Okay.
what I'm also going to do along with this is write some things up, and I can send you a link as well. I'm going to put up a blog post with just some specific resources, and I'll have the whole PowerPoint for download as well if you want to look over any of this again. But I'll put some recommended items there, and those will be some options for mics and options for cameras as well. You know, there are, you can get mics that will hook on to an iPhone. It's like an external mic or a camera that will have pretty decent sound quality. The iPhone itself actually has a pretty decent sound quality. If I record audio on my own smartphone, it's actually pretty good quality. So, and you know, there are mics you can plug in to your laptop as well. But unfortunately, since I can't really recommend ordering anything specific at this point, because I don't know what will even get there on time, I think probably the best option is to use the resources you have in speaking to people in your congregation. I would just ask, because chances are there's someone somewhere that has access to a decent mic that will just hook up to your laptop or will hook up to your iPhone or whatever. You know, I wish I could give you something better than that, but I think that's the way we're going to have to go with this. There's just not another great option. I mean, you can go, you know, Walmart and Target are currently still open because of, you know, food and pharmacy. So if you're brave enough to go out and you feel comfortable and safe enough to do that, you can always go to the tech section and just ask what they have in stock, and they'll have something. There will be something they can offer you. And it's, the good thing now is that this is getting a lot better. I mean, you can do really well off some pretty cheap stuff nowadays when you couldn't before. I mean, there was a time when a webcam was pretty terrible quality. I'm recording on a webcam on my laptop right now, you know, and it's pretty good quality. So you could probably, if you can get access to something, if you're able to get to a Walmart or Target, or borrow some from the congregation. But that's really the best I can offer. But like I said, I will have a list of some things you can look for specifically and see if you can find them, or if you're able to order them somewhere that will ship them. But you may not have great luck with that.
Here's a thought. If you have a lavalier mic, it might be the same size as the input on your computer. And you may be able to stretch that out a little bit. Investigate that. Those are usually like 1/8-inch jacks, which is what you usually need to go into a computer. So if you have a lavalier that you're using, try it out, see what happens.
Yeah, you'd have to try your own. I haven't used lavalier specifically hooking anything up to my computer. I mean, a lot of things are also Bluetooth now. If you have Bluetooth on your laptop or something, you can do that as well, which is pretty reasonable these days too. But like I said, just be willing to ask people for help, because there are people that can help you with this stuff. You'll find somebody. And come on, teenagers have nothing to do with their time right now, right? At least here in New York State, they're all home, and I assume for a lot of you. So they've got time. They can help. Okay. So another thing that I want to say here is I have film in your sanctuary, and I think some people are doing kind of sermons from their desk or at home or whatever. And I think, you know, those things are, you do what you've got. And if that's the only way you can do it, you do it. But whatever gives the appearance of this really being a church service, the most you can, as I said, really helps. So if you can do it in your sanctuary, I think it's totally, it's really the best option. It's easily just the best option. That's what you should do if you can. So if you're able to film in your sanctuary, even if it's empty and it's just you, that's okay. don't feel like it. I mean, it may feel weird preaching to an empty sanctuary. You may already be doing that, but it still really is better than doing it somewhere else. So the other thing, only stream if you have a high-speed connection. And I said, I really think more often pre-recorded will be better, and you'll know whether your internet works well if it's fast at your church. If it's not, just don't live stream. You could end up with a lot of technological glitches, just not worth it. Okay. I said here, if you have no camera, use an iPhone. Someone in your congregation has one. Really, I mean, you may have a decent webcam on your computer. That's okay. Somebody's got an iPhone. Somebody's got a computer with a decent webcam. Somebody's got something. And iPhones, again, pretty good video and audio. You'll be fine. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need a professional quality thing or anything like that. It will sound decent. Have a stable stand for your camera or phone is really important. Don't just have somebody sitting there with a camera trying to hold it steady. There are plenty, if you're using an iPhone, for example, and you are able to make a trip out to Walmart, if you don't feel safe going out, don't. But if you know someone who does, maybe ask them to go out and pick one up and drop it off for you. But if they're able to do that, you have these little things that you kind of clip onto a phone. They're made the size usually of an iPhone, and they'll have like a little stand. But it's like a tripod for a phone. Really cheap, really easy to use and set up. Okay. All right. So then I said music does not always record well. And this really depends on the quality of the audio and what you're using. But sometimes, especially elaborate music, if you're going to use music, keep it as simple as you possibly can. Just have an organ, piano, simple. It's going to sound better. If you try to have all of these instruments playing and you don't have the best recording quality, it could just sound garbled and confusing more than anything else. And, one thing we've got to talk about with music is if you are using music in your service, I know some people aren't using hymns because they're like, this is strange. How do you do that? But if you decide to do that and you want to have hymnody in your service, you got to make sure that you have the rights to use the music. I mean, that's been an issue. It seems like CPH does have a kind of temporary license letting people use hymns in a Lutheran service book. Right now, I don't know the details of the license, but you can Google it or call up CPH and ask. I don't know. I don't even know if they have anybody in their offices right now, but if they do, figure out what the details, just make sure what you're doing is legal. If not, you don't know, just like use public domain songs. There are plenty of them. So just kind of stick with ones that you don't have to worry about. But what you can't do is kind of take a recording of something that's not public domain and put it in there as the music for your service. So you don't have the rights to it, and you got to make sure you do. I know that in this time right now, a lot of organizations, it seems like, are kind of allowing a lot more with this stuff, but just check to make sure before you use something. I think that's important. Yes, is there? Okay. All right. So let's see. Basic lighting. Okay. This is just very basic stuff. When you're recording something in your sanctuary or anywhere, don't have lights behind the camera. Like if the camera's pointed at lights, it will look terrible. You'll look dark. Have the lights pointed at you from away from the camera. Okay. That's the kind of lighting I have right now. I have like lighting equipment in my office here that is like aimed from this direction at me. If you have lights, the best thing to do is what they call 3-point lighting, but you get it from different angles, but kind of pointed all toward you. One light toward you tends to cast a lot of shadows, and multiple lights kind of take those away. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just make sure that your lighting is not terrible, that you don't look like a, ominous black figure with just a bunch of bright lights behind you, because I've seen some people do that, and it's an easy thing to do. Just make sure which lights you're using and test out different lights as you record too. This is really something that I can't, urge you to do enough, is just test things, try different ways of recording, try different devices, try your laptop, try the audio on your phone, try, aiming lights this way or the camera this way to see the lights. You just try all sorts of different stuff. Don't just go up there first thing without testing anything. If you're doing live streaming, test your live streaming quite a bit before you start to do it. You can have technological issues. As we saw, even coming here, I had some issues getting in with Zoom for this meeting. So that just happens. It's part of technology. There are going to be issues, but okay. Test everything beforehand and then ask for feedback. Just be really open and willing to listen to people for feedback about what worked, what didn't work, and try things. Like, everyone's starting something new right now. Well, almost everyone. But if you haven't had a lot of experience doing this, which most of us haven't been in a situation like this, there are going to be things that can go better. Just be asking people, ask people in your congregation, ask your church council, your elders, whoever, just get some advice, get feedback, and work with that feedback. Just knowing that, like, this is an experience we're all trying to figure out. We're going to grow through all of this as we try to figure things out together. Okay. And then some more tips here for online services. If you're going to do a full liturgical service or you're going to do hymns, make sure you have the words somewhere. Okay. Don't just have the service. You want to make it as accessible as possible. Now, there are different ways to do this. I saw somebody sent me a tweet of their congregation where they set something up where they had a video on one side and the words of the liturgy and the bulletin on the other side. And I don't know what they use to do that, but not everyone's going to be able to do that. If you really know a lot about video editing and can spend a lot of time, you can edit a whole service together and put music and add words in there. And that's something that I'm going to be doing for the congregation here, but probably most people don't have the time or abilities to do something like that. So probably the easiest thing to do is, if you're doing the service, just make sure that people have access. And that means I put a site, scribd.com. You can upload PDFs there, give people access, and email a link. For people that don't really use computers, print out the bulletins and send them in the mail so they get them. Drop it off their doorstep so they have a paper printed bulletin that week with all of the words. Yes, Pastor Latois.
What about this? What about what you're doing right now? We could theoretically shrink the screen of the broadcast and put the words this way on a PowerPoint presentation. That's a possibility. You figured out how to do this, obviously. Yeah, sure. You could do that. Yeah, if you wanted to do, there are probably there's other software you can use to do that too. But if you wanted to use something like Zoom, again, you'd have to pay for the pro account, which is like $15 a month. Mm-hmm. You may only be using it for 2 months. Let's hope it's not that long, right? Okay. So it's really not, it's worth it. If you wanted to do that, you can record everything on Zoom, and you could have someone sit at the computer and they could share the screen, go through the words, just like you'd have somebody maybe during a church service if you project things. And then, when you're preaching or you're doing the scripture readings or whatever else, they can get rid of that. As you saw that I did earlier at the beginning, you can stop the share of the PowerPoint and then start it again. So yeah, that's definitely a way to go. You can absolutely do that. You just have to make sure you have someone who knows the basics of how to do that as well. Something I'll also do, and I'll take your question in just a minute. So something also, what was I going to say? Actually, I'll take your question now, and then I'll go back to that. So Dean, go ahead.
Sorry, I was muted. I really didn't have a question as much as we were asking about putting like the printed liturgy on the screen. I know that Pastor Jamie Strickler does that with some particular piece of software that he uses, and if anybody wanted to inquire on that, I could either find out from Jamie, or you could reach out to him and he can tell you.
If you're putting a recorded video on Facebook, you can post it along with other objects such as JPEG pictures, and that's what Jamie did. As far as I can tell, Now, I haven't explored the new interface for Facebook Live, but as far as I can tell, you cannot do that with a live stream on Facebook. But I may be wrong on that. I haven't figured out if you can. So
Yeah, there may be a way to do that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know of that, but I also have not used Facebook live stream that much. YouTube is what I usually use. So so there may be something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, and what I was going to say before, I will post also. I'm gonna write up a blog post. It may not be done tonight, maybe done tomorrow, but that's going to have resources. And one of those is going to be, I'm going to put some links to YouTube videos that are just basic instructional videos to use this stuff too. So if you're like, I know nothing about computers, I don't know how to use any of this software, I'm going to give you some easy videos. You just click, they'll walk you through everything very, very step by step as you do this as well. So yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people who use their phones, smartphones all the time, they can pull out their smartphone. If you have a PDF, you have the service there, and they can just follow along with what's going on their TV if they put it on. But I think anytime we do something like that, you have to be aware of the people who don't have that, of course. And, you know, maybe it is, I don't know what the situation with mail is or anything right now. I haven't mailed anything out since this stuff has started, but even if you want to, yeah, like I said, drive around and drop off printed copies at people's houses or have someone else do that. I don't know. You don't have to see them. You could just drop it on the porch and go. I don't know, but just explore creative ways. Those are just some options of ways to do that. But if there is a way to do that for your Facebook Live or some other program, I'm not sure, but if there is, then that you can do that as well. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I also, when we're talking about music, as I mentioned, if you do have recordings of music, because this is the thing, the music is going to be the hard part of this. And well, the hardest part is we're going to talk about communion because you can't really do that virtually. But of the things you can do, the most difficult one is going to be music. And there are a lot of ways that can go really badly. One is you've got a bunch of people there, or however many people you'll have together at a church, or I don't know, have them all separated, different parts of the sanctuary trying to sing, and you could live stream it. It could just sound really bad, and nobody can sing along. You can't tell what's even going on. That's one thing. Another is if you're live streaming and the music skips around or there's any lag, it will mess up and people won't be able to sing. And so some people are not doing anything at all. That is certainly an option. There are people that are playing hymns and you just have a public domain audio recording. Look up, just go on Google and look up public domain hymn recording. Like just Google that, you should find stuff. So I wish I could give you like, here's a website that has all of these, all the hymns in the Lutheran service book, all, here in a row. And I can't give you anything like that. But NCPH does have some resources themselves. There's like an organ companion that I think is quite expensive. But if you do have access to that, it seems like they have at least they've kind of laxed on their license for the time being. But most of us probably don't have that. So you can find things. Just make sure what you do have is public domain. You don't want to get yourself in trouble through this time. Okay. So, and then the other part of audio is chanting. And if you chant the whole divine service, which is what I do, and I know not all congregations do that, so this may not be an issue for you, but if you are one that does, and you, would you mind turning off your audio or muting your audio if you're not speaking? I just hear some background noise from somebody there. So, if you are chanting the service and you want people to do the other part, just make sure you have somebody else with you that is singing the other part so you can have people sing along, because people feel awkward singing them. It's awkward enough to stand in your living room with your family and sing like you're in a church service when you're the only ones there. It's really awkward if there's no one else leading in the music. So it helps to just have someone, a cantor, just somebody singing the other parts of the liturgy. Okay, while you're doing it. And it's good to have someone else doing it. Don't just have the pastor do both parts, because that can just be kind of confusing. So I think that's the best way to handle it. So, and the final kind of tip I have here about online services is just don't worry about this being perfect. You really only need a few things to make this work decently well. Clear audio. It doesn't have to be perfect audio, but audio that's clear enough that people can clearly tell what you're saying. Some kind of visual, again, doesn't have to be perfect. Words that people can follow along with, and a biblical sermon. Make sure your sermon is good. So that's pretty much it with this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things related. But now that I know this is like a ton of information that I'm covering very quickly. So any questions or comments here on what I've gone over?
There may be one other source for music. I've come across on YouTube a lot of Lutheran services and hymns in those services, like higher things, some of the LCMS conferences and so forth. There are videos of music that are out there, and quite good ones too.
There are. Yeah, YouTube is a good place to go. And a lot of people on YouTube would be very happy to let you use what they've recorded. Honestly, like they'd be very happy that someone was using it. So just make sure you look into what it is beforehand and make sure that they're allowing people to use it. Oftentimes they are. I mean, unless if it's CPH, it's their YouTube channel, they probably have a copyright out. But again, they're loosening up their copyrights for the time being, so probably then would also be fine. But that is a good place to look too, definitely.
Looks like Pastor Storrs posted hymnary.org.
Ooh, okay.
Is the source. Capital HYMNARY.org.
Thank you, Pastor Storrs. Yeah, I've seen that site before. But I appreciate that. I think, yeah, I know they have both audio files as well as sheet music. Is that correct? From what I remember. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, great resource.